Howdy my totally tubular gamers, we're back with another ranking video, and it's another shooter ranking video, and today's is going to be on Counter-Strike. Oh yeah! Now when it comes to online shooters, especially on the PC, I don't think there's a series as legendary as Counter-Strike. There's just nothing even close. Really, since its inception, Counter-Strike has remained a staple amongst PC gaming and is just stupidly popular even nowadays. Whether you're hopping on for just a quick little casual game or you're ultra competitive about Counter-Strike and your skins, Counter-Strike is just absolutely beloved when it comes to shooters. And most people who are even a little into CS usually really love CS, but for the two people who don't know, Counter-Strike is a series of first-person shooters in which a team of terrorists battles to perpetuate an act of terror. Whether it's a bombing, a hostage-taking, or it's an assassination, counter-terrorists will try to prevent it, whether that's defusing said bomb, rescuing the hostages, or an escort mission. The series actually originally started as a mod for Half-Life, but Valve very quickly picked up the game and turned it into a retail product because it was stupidly popular as a mod too. And nowadays Counter-Strike really is just eternal. There have actually been a couple Counter-Strike games released over the years, but each one has not really been so much as a sequel, but rather just kind of a refinement and an upgrade in the graphics department. They have all maintained that core Counter-Strike gameplay that really has just been there from day one. Sure, some tweaks have been made here and there, and they've added some new maps and a game mode or two, but really that core bomb defusal Counter-Strike gameplay has just always been there. And people really can't get enough of it. Even nowadays, the core gameplay of Counter-Strike is just beloved for a number of reasons, whether it's how the guns handle, whether it's the strategies, or just the high amount of skill that is needed to even play efficiently. People just love Counter-Strike. There is still a huge competitive scene for CS, there's a big streaming scene for CS, people just still love Counter-Strike. Again, one of the most beloved shooter series of all time, and for good reason. And I'll admit it, there was a time in my life where I couldn't get enough Counter-Strike either. It was during my high school days. I just loved playing Counter-Strike like all the time. I thought it had really rewarding team gameplay. I thought the gunplay was just amazing. It still is great, and I just couldn't stop playing it. This was obviously before I started my crusade of finishing hundreds upon hundreds of games a year, but I just loved Counter-Strike myself even. And so as always, we're going to rank all the Counter-Strike games. This isn't an easy task because I actually do really like all the Counter-Strike games. I have fond memories with just about all of them. We're going to be looking at all the North American ones. I know there's a few Asian ones like Counter-Strike Online 1 and 2 and Nexxon Zombies. We're not going to include those. We're looking at just the main North American ones. And when it comes to ranking these games, it's going to be very subjective. Everyone has their own feelings, thoughts, and memories of Counter-Strike games, whether it's the original, whether it's Source, or whether it's Go. Everybody's got their own feelings toward each game, so let me know down below what your favorite Counter-Strike game is, maybe a favorite memory, and why. I'm going to try to look at these games as they are in 2022. Don't worry, most of them are still very populated. So let's just get right into it. Like, share, sub, comment, all that good stuff. What's the weakest in the Counter-Strike games? I think everyone can agree that the weakest Counter-Strike game is Counter-Strike on the Xbox. Not the Xbox 360, not the Xbox One, no. Counter-Strike on the original Xbox. And it's pretty obvious why Counter-Strike on Xbox is at the bottom. The game is dead. Xbox Live was officially shut down in 2010 for the original Xbox, and I really doubt there's any fan servers here like Halo 2. And Counter-Strike is one of those games that lives and dies by its multiplayer. If there's no multiplayer, there's basically no game. The game has a single player mode, but really it's just training and you can go up against some bots. Interestingly enough, the game actually has some exclusive maps to it. And some of the original maps have been slightly modified due to the Xbox's hardware limitations, but what you have here is a pretty faithful recreation of Counter-Strike for a console. And you know, I've messed around in the single player and yeah, it seems totally fine enough. I would have loved to have tried this game in its heyday, but I didn't even know what first-person shooters were back then. So if anyone has any fond memories of it on the original Xbox, you can let me know. But yeah, it's pretty much just a relic now, and you can't really do much with it. Alright, and so here we have the very overlooked Counter-Strike Condition Zero, initially releasing in 2004. It was actually the follow-up to 1.6. It still uses the Gold Source engine, but it updated a lot of things like the character models, textures, maps, and other graphical features. It also did include 2 single-player campaigns, Tour of Duty and Condition Zero Deleted Scenes. I'm just kind of putting everything together here for Counter-Strike Condition Zero. Now, me personally, I don't have a ton of experience with this game, especially online. I've played like a handful of games and just went, well, why wouldn't I just play 1.6? It seems better than this. This game is, you know, slightly better graphics. It's got some reworked map areas and, again, some better graphics. The game still does go online and people are still actually playing it, so that puts it above Counter-Strike Xbox by default, but I just don't really see any reason why I'd want to play this over 1.6 in terms of the online. So that leads us with Tour of Duty and the deleted scenes. Tour of Duty really is just a bunch of bot matches. You go through all the maps, defeating bots, completing challenges, and this really doesn't have a lot to it. I mean, it's actually pretty challenging, and a number of the challenges can actually be pretty tricky, but you really just go through all the maps in bot matches. There's really not a lot to this. And so that leaves us with the deleted scenes. Now, the deleted scenes, I've heard some pretty terrible things about over the years, and you know, after playing this game for even a short amount of time, you can really see why you've heard so many terrible things. The deleted scenes are pretty bad. You quickly realize in a single-player setting just how generic Counter-Strike is, and I don't think it makes for a very exciting single-player experience. There's not really much of a story here. There's 12 missions to go through, and they're all equally bland and just kind of boring. It kind of reminds me of like those old Delta Force games, or I guess a precursor to Modern Warfare, really. But none of these missions stand out all that much. There are a few set pieces here where you have to blow up a car or something, but they really just don't do anything all that exciting. Now, my biggest issue with this game has got to be the actual gunplay and just general gameplay when you're running around shooting people. It is bad for a number of reasons. The guns don't behave at all like how Counter-Strike guns behave. They all just kind of feel very similar and don't have any unique attributes like CS has them. And you know, I guess I can kinda understand them tweaking it for a single player campaign, but I still just don't think they feel all that well. They don't really have much impact. The enemies don't really react to them, and then the enemies themselves, the AI is just awful in this game. Like, they don't do like anything, they don't put up any challenge. You'll headshot them and they won't die, which doesn't really make much sense. And ultimately, it's just incredibly unsatisfying killing these guys. There's just nothing really to it, and it doesn't have any of the weight or impact that regular CS has. The game is also just incredibly buggy, whether it's the AI glitching out your teammates or not not being able to go through doors, or the set pieces not working, or just having to restart areas. Like, I was like, why is this game so buggy all these years later? At least the game has a bunch of different environments, so that's good, but Condition Zero as a whole is absolutely not worth playing. This game came out in 2004. Let me tell you what else came out in 2004. Doom 3, Far Cry, Half-Life 2, Counter-Strike Source. Like, this game gets blown away by all of those. It wasn't good when it came out, and I wouldn't say it's worth playing now. The graphical upgrades just aren't worth it. Go back to 1.6. Yeah, not worth playing. Alright, and so here is Counter-Strike Source, initially released in 2004. Now, Counter-Strike Source was released originally with Half-Life 2, but then became standalone on Steam, which is how I'm pretty sure most people play it nowadays. Now, Counter-Strike Source I know hasn't gotten the most love throughout the years, but I still have a ton of fun memories with this game, especially its modding scene. I've had a ton of fun on modded maps, and really everything but competitive Counter-Strike. See, Counter-Strike Source was never really seen as like the competitive Counter-Strike. It did have a competitive scene, especially back in the day, but nowadays I'm pretty sure it's pretty dwindling in the competitive scene. I'm not saying it didn't ever have a competitive scene, it's just nowhere near as big as 1.6 or Go. And you know, there was a variety of reasons why Counter-Strike Source never took off like 1.6 or Go. It had a very botched release. People thought that the game was just easier to play than the original, and the truth is 1.6 was still doing people just fine by the time Source came out, and people just didn't really want to move to Source. Despite never really taking off all that much competitively, I still have had a ton of fun with this game. Something that this game has over 1.6 and Go is it had a great, still has a really good modding scene. If you want to play some crazy ass game modes, Counter-Strike Source is definitely the game. It had a really fun gun game, it had a really fun zombies mod. Like, I really love the modded servers of Counter-Strike Source. And it was definitely the biggest highlight for me personally with Source. The core gameplay was still pretty solid. I mean, it's Counter-Strike, it's always going to be decently solid. Really, the game was just kind of a remake of 1.6 in Source's engine, so you know, better physics, better graphics. But despite that, the core gameplay is still absolutely Counter-Strike. It's still pretty much the same premise, it's like the same maps too. It just, again, it didn't take off for the reasons I mentioned, and it's kind of hard to like review Counter-Strike's gameplay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Counter-Strike's gameplay. It's a very fun, competitive game, and really it comes down to your personal experiences with Counter-Strike if you wanted to, say, review or rank Counter-Strike. So I have Source here because I have a lot of good memories with it, but I don't have as many memories as I do with the other Counter-Strike games that are higher on this list. I think Source has a great community. I think a lot of the modded servers are really fun. I've had a ton of memories. You needed to play Trouble in Terrorist Town on Gary's mod, at least you used to. I don't think you do anymore, but Counter-Strike Source is still a really fun time. It's pretty goofy nowadays and isn't taken seriously really all that much anymore, but I mean, if you're going to try Counter-Strike, There's no reason to not try Source, you'll probably get it in the bundle anyway. And the game is actually still relatively active with a couple thousand players a day on Steam at least. Let me know your favorite community servers down below. I mentioned some of mine. I think it's still worth playing nowadays. And so here we have the one that started it all. We have the original Counter-Strike 1.6, initially releasing in 2000 as a mod for Half-Life before eventually getting its own standalone release with Valve. Now Counter-Strike 1.6, do I really even need to say anything about this game and the landmark title that it is? The legacy that this game has left on not only the gaming scene but esports in general? To say that the game's landmark for multiplayer shooters is an understatement. This is like one of the most influential video games probably ever made, and there's a reason there are so many people, even in 2022, still playing this game. Now I have a lot of fun memories with the original Counter-Strike. All of the fun memories were definitely more competitive rather than Source's crazy modding community, but I still think that if you want to play some classic Counter-Strike, 1.6 you can easily just pick it up and play it like it was 2000, and it's still just as good then. It's aged remarkably well. And honestly, it's still as fun as ever. The only thing I gotta say is if you want to try to get into 1.6 now, you're gonna get annihilated by most of the people playing it nowadays. The people that are playing it nowadays, like pretty seriously, have been playing it a long time. And there's a good reason they've been playing it a long time, is because it's still actually hella good with that really addicting gameplay loop, realistic-ish weapons, just great handling and satisfying team dynamics. And sure, it's not the prettiest game. I will say it didn't even look amazing for when it came out. It looked pretty good, and it hasn't aged all the best. The models are a bit clunky, and some of the textures are really just kind of hideous. But, I mean, that doesn't really matter like at all. The game is still really fun. The gameplay loop is still really good. It was really good back when it came out. It was revolutionary when it came out, and it's still good now. Sure, there's Go, where it's, you know, much better looking and it's a lot smoother than this game, but like this game still, again, it absolutely holds up. And if you really want to see where Counter-Strike came from, you can pick up and play this game. If you've played Go, you can definitely pick up and play this game. You might hate the graphics, but I still think it is fun. It's still worth playing. It's pretty impressive how the game is still very alive and still taken seriously. And at this point, I don't think it really matters how old the game gets. People are still going to be playing this one. This game is just kind of goated at this point. It doesn't matter if it's 20 years old, 30 years old, or even older. There's always going to be people playing this game competitive. It really just has a legendary status to it that can never be tarnished. It's Counter-Strike 1.6. It means a lot to fans of shooters and multiplayer games in general, and I've done enough talking about this one. You don't need me to even talk about it. You already know how important this game is. If for whatever reason you haven't tried it at this point, try it. See how it is. See how Counter-Strike originally was. You'd be impressed. Okay, is it really even a surprise? Was it really even up for debate of what the best Counter-Strike game is? Of course it's going to be Global Offensive. Go is the best Counter-Strike game of them all. It's the most polished, it's the most updated, it's the most competitive, it's the most X, Y, and Z. You already know this, I already know this. It's the best Counter-Strike game of them all. End of video. Okay, wait. We won't end the video just yet. I have a ton of fun memories with this one, way more than Source, way more than 1.6, probably as much as those combined. I remember playing the game in beta. I was really excited for it. I was like, wow, a new Counter-Strike, a new version of Counter-Strike. The game looks great. All these years later, I think it still does look pretty good. I like the art style, and the game is just aesthetically pleasing. I really liked how you could split up between casual matchmaking, competitive matchmaking, server browsing, there's community stuff, there's other game modes. I mean, it really is the most fleshed out and extensive Counter-Strike by a landslide. Valve really made sure that this game could be played as competitive as possible, and it is. It's the most competitive CS by far, and there's still, you know, tons and tons of people playing it nowadays. There's all these weapon skins, which I'd rather not talk about as I don't really love these, but, you know, that's there too. The game has been updated and tweaked and balanced so much that it's like, it's just as close to perfect as it's going to get, I guess, at this point for Counter-Strike. I mean, this is really the best way to play Counter-Strike's core gameplay. The core gameplay still, of course, 20-something years later, is still fantastic. It's great in this new engine, newer engine. And again, I just have a ton of fun times with this game, whether it was casually just messing around with some community servers or gun game or deathmatch or just casual Counter-Strike. I mean, that's fun too. Or even the competitive scene where I've gotten hella sweaty, I've gotten really serious about it. I never got all that far competitively, I won't lie to you, and eventually I did drop it. But when I was a teenager, I got so into Counter-Strike Go. Like, I don't know, it was just so much fun. It was so rewarding, and I remember feeling really raw at the game sometimes, and stuff like planting the bomb when you're the last one alive, or defusing the bomb when you're the last one alive, or being able to execute team strategies really well, like where the gas grenade goes, where a flashbang could go, actually being able to backstab somebody. Like, yeah, these are memories that are just not really gonna ever leave me. I still remember a lot about this game. I still remember a lot of the callouts, and it's like, it's been a long time since I played the game. The game just had such a big impact, and clearly it still has a huge impact today. It still has a huge draw. It's still one of the most played games on Steam. It's one of the most played games in the world for a reason. It's Counter-Strike Go. And yeah, there's just really nothing else I can add at this point. I mean, this ranking video seemed kind of like a foregone conclusion, but I really did want to just talk about Counter-Strike. I've never really talked about it on my channel, and you know, hopefully I've enlightened some people and resurfaced some fun memories they might have with some other Counter-Strike games. If you have any fun memories, you let me know. That's really it for this video. Hope everyone has a wonderful day, evening, Christmas, 4th of July, whatever the nearest holiday is. See y'all later. Bye-bye.